This is a message to Republicans. You keep saying that we want free stuff and that the government can't do anything right. So you need an education. The microchip, the internet, GPS, touchscreens, space travel, those are a few examples of world-changing technology that was created by our government or required massive financial support from our government. Now, I paid for that with a third of my money in the form of taxes, but I didn't get a return because all our technology was just given away to private industries, and then it was sold back to us so that someone else could profit. Now that's what free stuff looks like. Am I supposed to pay money to breathe, or have access to water, or community, or civilization, or is that my natural right, being born on the planet? Because that's what economic rights mean. They mean I have a right to participate in the economy without having to be born into the Trump family or some other social predator's bloodline. Now I'm going to teach you another word, democracy. Now wannabe mobsters, they love saying the government's bad at everything. When a government's ruled by the people, it's called our voice. So it's not bad, and you're not going to silence our voice. And whether it's the oil industry or the criminal justice system or the International Monetary Fund or Facebook or Congress or the presidency, if any organization becomes oppressive and unaccountable, that's tyranny. And then when we make them accountable, that's democracy. Now, Republican leadership today, they're against democracy, and they're not even trying to hide it. They're only in power because of an undemocratic electoral college that was created by slaveholders. They're only in power right now because we have an undemocratic institution called the Senate that gives a single resident of Wyoming as much voting power as 68 people in California. Because every state gets 2 senators, doesn't matter how many people live in them, and Republicans love that. They love how millions more Americans vote for Democrats but don't get any representation, because they love free stuff, just like the Founding Fathers. Well, guess what? Slavery's over. States are not people. Corporations are not people. Concentrated power and wealth and a master race and master culture, none of that is democracy. And your sacred Constitution is long overdue for a rewrite, as holy of a document as you've been thinking it is, conditionally, of course. Because even the empire-hungry colonists would have been disgusted by your handing over everything, sir, yes, sir, to the lords and ladies of big box stores, oil, and money that Republicans are worshiping today. The American dream made us famous all over the world. We gave people hope. But Republicans love it so much more now that people have the worst chance at making it here than any other rich nation. They prefer the class system, the caste system, extreme inequality, and poverty, because keeping other people down, the communist, the Mexican, the scary pronoun, whatever word they want to give them, it makes them feel superior, like the old days, scared and demonizing whatever's out in the woods, outside of the colony. It doesn't matter that their lives aren't much better. They're living through the achievements of their gods, icons of money, power, cruelty, and dripping arrogance. And that's why they love a fabric flag more than the human flesh and blood that live and die under it, because they're idol worshippers. And that is exactly what Jesus and Muhammad and Moses told you not to do. How dare you invoke the name of the Almighty and his messengers against the weak, the meek, and the poor? The prophets led movements of the persecuted before they were overtaken by the persecutors, who allied themselves with totalitarians like you're doing now with modern-day Saudi Arabia and Israel under Netanyahu and this radical Christian cult, all for a dirty oil empire that is soaked in the blood of men, women, and children, and all the creatures of the earth. Now, when Republican leaders say they love freedom, they love the freedom of unchecked domination. And their followers, they love the freedom to live out some paranoid revenge fantasy of needing a firearm in case their superiority gets challenged in a Walmart or on some street in Portland. If you're wondering what set me off, I just saw how the right-wing PR machine's uplifting war criminal soldiers that the Navy condemned and their dear leader pardoned. And I guess some people on the right want these savages to campaign with their master as heroes. And they think a Navy SEAL calling out war crimes is somehow political correctness. Well, my grandfather would disagree with you. This Republican goon squad worships the government when it gives them illegitimate authority over the people. Then they march in lockstep, drunk with their abuse of power. Well, no. You can't have our democracy. You can't make it a great republic for slaveholders and wage slavery, not again, not now, not ever. We beat you and your masters in the Civil War. We beat you on the beaches of Normandy. We beat you in Birmingham, and we're going to beat you again. Because the truth wins. And you can stand by while all our communications networks get drowned in some Russian psychological warfare. You can redraw all our maps with a Sharpie. You can keep suppressing the voting rights of our Black, Brown, and First Nation brothers and sisters. And go ahead. Keep using the old slave laws to false multiply your votes. Keep tricking all your scared, angry, ignorant old white people into supplication before your orange golden calf. But we're going to beat you. We're going to replace you. And we're going to change the culture. If not this election, then out in the streets. Because you cannot have this land. You cannot have this country. It was never yours in the first place.
And I just realized I was muted. That's nice. That was a wonderful intro setup, and I messed that up. Let's try that one again. Today's date is September 12, 2020, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, Will Buchanan. On how the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. With that being said, that was actually Matthew Cook from Now This and his opinion on the current status of the world right now, and I completely, wholeheartedly agree with that man as far as everything that he said. Just to go ahead and give it beforehand, as far as him explaining the constant state of our Americas right now. And going into that, like I said before, as I do try to do these podcasts, I do try to make it family friendly, so I do try to watch my language a little bit. However, there are going to be some things that I am going to show that might be a little intense, so viewer discretion is advised when we get there. So let's go ahead and get to the elephant in the room, shall we? Because we just realized Trump lied, and well, we already knew that, but it's amazing now that he lied about knowing about the threat of COVID-19, and here's his response.
To battleground Michigan, where he narrowly won 4 years ago, President Trump still under fire for telling Bob Woodward he was publicly minimizing the coronavirus threat.
I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
That he privately warned about.
This is deadly stuff.
Why did you lie to the American people, and why should we trust?
Terrible question, and the phraseology, I didn't lie. What I said is we have to be calm, we can't be panicked. I put the ban on China, so obviously, outwardly, I said it's a very serious problem. And it's always a serious problem. That doesn't mean I'm going to jump up and down in the air and start saying people are going to die, people are going to die. No.
And now, new excerpts on race, recorded a month after the police killing of George Floyd.
Do you have any sense that privilege has isolated and put you in a cave to a certain extent, as it put me and I think lots of white privileged people in a cave, and that we have to work our way out of it to understand the anger and the pain particularly black people feel in this country?
No, you really drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you? Listen to you. Wow. No, I don't feel that at all.
And was asked about systemic racism.
Well, I think there is everywhere. I think probably less here than most places, or less here than many places.
Okay, but is it here in a way that it has an impact on people's lives?
I think it is, and it's unfortunate, but I think it is.
In Florida, where polls show a dead heat.
Okay, so it pretty much goes to another story from there. But what I wanted to get into is the heart of that was that Bob Woodward, a guy that actually interviewed Trump, I think about last year or so. I'm sorry, that was completely wrong. He actually interviewed him January of this year, and again back in March of this year, which he did surround about the coronavirus. And which the big story right now with Dorito is that did he know about how dangerous the coronavirus was at the time, and if so, why did he turn around and lie? Pretty much. Now, a lot of you are saying he didn't lie. Well, yeah, he really did lie, considering the fact that, well, this is a wonderful thing that we have video and we have history. And here's Dorito pretty much explaining from a timeline of the coronavirus, and you tell me if he lied.
It will go away, just stay calm, it will go away. A lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. We're in great shape, though. You treat this like a flu. 15 people out of billions of people. 15 people. Yeah. They're getting better, and soon they're all going to be better. Hopefully, it's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that, right? Coronavirus. And this is their new hoax. So healthy people, if you're healthy, you will probably go through a process and you'll be fine. You take a solid flu vaccine, you don't think that would have an impact or much of an impact on corona?
No. Probably not.
Mr. President, is it safe or appropriate to be holding rallies during a public health crisis like this?
I think it's very safe, yeah. I think it's very safe. Things are going very well, as you see.
Do you believe it's inevitable that the coronavirus will spread across the country?
No, I don't think that's inevitable at all.
We have a report today, the global death rate at 3.4%.
Well, I think the 3.4% is really a false number. Now, this is just my hunch. Personally, I would say the number is way under 1%.
At this moment, we think we have it very much in hand. It's going to all work out. Everybody has to be calm. It's all going to work out. It will end. People have to remain calm. Be calm. It's really working out, and a lot of good things are going to happen.
What do you say to Americans who are concerned that you're not taking this seriously enough and that some of your statements don't match what your health experts are saying?
That's CNN, fake news. This is just a temporary moment of time. We're in great shape compared to other places. We are in really good shape. And 5 million within a month, I doubt we'll need anywhere near that. As of this moment, we have 50 deaths, which is a lot of good decisions were made, or that number could be many times that. But it's something that we have tremendous control of.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it at 10. I think we've done a great job. But we're going to defeat the invisible enemy. I think we're going to do it even faster than we thought. And it will be a complete victory. It'll be a total victory. Because people get better. I mean, most people are getting better. Most, by far, the people, you get better.
Is it possible that your impulse to put a positive spin on things may be giving Americans a false sense of hope?
No, I don't think so. Many doctors, and I've read many, many doctors, they can't believe the great job that we've done. Doing it the way we're doing it is much better. It's really much better. America will again and soon be open for business. Very soon. We're near the end of our historic battle with the invisible enemy. I think it's ridiculous. We don't have to do it. A lot of those states could go back right now, and they probably will. This is going to go away.
Without a vaccine, sir, why do you think the virus will just be gone?
It's going to go. It's going to leave. It's going to be gone. It's going to be eradicated. But with or without a vaccine, it's going to pass. This virus is going to disappear. It's a question of when. This is going to go away without a vaccine. We have met the moment, and we have prevailed. It'll go away at some point. It'll go away. If we stop testing right now, we'd have very few cases, if any. I always say, even without it, it goes away. The numbers are very minuscule compared to what it was. It's dying out. I think that at some point, that's going to sort of just disappear.
And again, that's also from Now This, as far as I like to call it a historical context of Trump and pretty much him just downplaying the entire virus situation. I honestly do not understand it. There's no way to defend it. And of course, those that go to his rally will try to sit there and say that yes, we're gonna believe him because he's the person, he's our wet dream, he's the guy that we wanted in office, and only because he's only in office because a lot of us didn't vote. Sad but true. I'm not surprised that Trump is going to sit there and say that Well, no, it's like, oh, I didn't lie. I didn't just tell the people the truth. And again, we now see since March how dangerous the coronavirus is, and still is. And of course, it amazes me that they're talking about other countries. Keep in mind, China is almost back to normal. Singapore is almost back to normal. New Zealand is virtually 0 cases. Most of the European Union is actually back to a sense of normality, to where even some countries aren't even using masks anymore. So, even our North American brothers and sisters up in Canada have lower cases than us, only because stricter policies were put in place. And I know a lot of y'all are going to sit there and say, but it's a mask. Yes, masks do help. Social distancing does help. The fact that China went so extreme to shut their entire country down to where now cases are basically in the singles, yes, that was effective. Was it extreme? Yes, it was extreme. It did not mean for the simple fact of the matter that because it was so extreme that it was not effective. Of course, when they hear countries shutting down, and of course you have those would-be Americans out there that just want to sit there and be like, well, this is freedom. This is America. This is freedom. And you want to sit there and just go, okay. Because if you're like me in my home state of Tennessee, I happen to see it every weekend when Broadway, especially in Nashville, gets overcrowded and people with no mask and things of that nature. And I'm still surprised why in the world that we're still in phase 1 of trying to get back to a sense of normalcy. I should not be surprised by that. But then again, most of the country is like this. Not just Tennessee, unfortunately, but other places, other countries, other cities and states like this as well are having the same problem. And again, and not to get back to the fact, the point is, yes, Dorito pretty much took this coronavirus lightly, even though he had his national security advisor at the time explain to him the extreme problem and that the implications with this virus can bring, and he downplayed it. And even so much more is that, yes, he knew. That's the takeaway from all of this, because he knew how dangerous this virus was, and instead of doing what he should have done the first time, he was typical Dorito. He turned around and downplayed it. Oh, it's going to go away. The heat's going to kill it. Here, inject some bleach into you. That'll help. Take some hydrochloroquine. That'll help. And of course, going down the line of all these things that supposedly curb the coronavirus, and they don't. So again, if there's another reason why you should not be paying attention to this voting cycle, that's one. But moving right along, guys, because I said we got a lot that we're going into. He is not the only person in the hot seat today. He's not in the hot seat this week. Of course, William Barr, the Attorney General, and I like to call him the President's personal attorney, is also being possibly looked into for impeachment. Senator Chairman Gerald Nadler said on Wednesday of this week that they are considering impeachment proceedings against the U.S. Attorney General at the time, William Barr. And the reason why is because of, well, the nail in the coffin of all this was that Trump is still being sued for a libel suit by a woman that claimed that she was sexually assaulted by Trump. In which at this point, William Barr and the Department of Justice have decided to sit in on this and basically be the president's personal attorney in this case. Now, I know a lot of you guys are thinking, how is that possible? Really, it's not. For the simple fact of the matter is, there's only a very few instances where a certain person can come into a certain trial. And of course, when William Barr was asked about this, he gave his usual, answer that makes no sense.
Explain why the Justice Department has decided to take over the defense in this libel case involving the president.
This is done frequently. It's been done for presidents. It's been done for congressmen. The normal process was followed in this particular case you're talking about. And there's particular cases that are right on point.
The images are stark.
Okay, that video got away from me a little bit. Sorry about that, guys. So, of course, William Barr sits there and says, well, it's been done before. It's been done by politicians and not only presidents that we've stepped in representative. You're kind of half right. The reason why I say that, he's talking about the Westfall statute. For all those that don't know, the Westfall statute is basically if someone is an employee of the executive branch and they are sued for something, could be anything. If they are sued for something while working for the government, then the Department of Justice can step in and defend them in court, if moved to federal court. Keep in mind what I just said, that the only way that that the Department of Justice can step in and defend a person of the executive branch is that it had to occur during their time as president and is in the way of affecting their duties. Keep in mind what I just said. This is the key thing that William Barr does not say. He is right that the Department of Justice has in the past stepped in and defended executive branch people. However, the last time the Department of Justice has stepped in and actually defended someone with the executive branch was really before Nixon. Anybody after that, even Gerald Ford, Bush version 1, Bush version 2, Clinton, they never needed the Department of Justice to step in and act as if their personal attorney. So again, Barr is half right that the Westfall statute is in there to allow that to happen. But the problem with this one is the woman, Miss Carroll, who was accusing Trump of sexually assaulting her, this happened during the mid-1990s. So if we're kind of going by the Westfall statute here, this assault that Miss Carroll is accusing Dorito of happened in mid-1990s. Trump has only been president since 2016. By that statute, the Department of Justice can't defend him in this case. But again, William Barr being an attorney, you think you understand the Westfall statute. But I just found it interesting to where, again, this is the reason why Nadler and the House committee is going after William Barr, because William Barr again William Barr has acted more as the president's personal attorney than he has as the Attorney General for the United States. Keep in mind, he circumvented the Robert Mueller process. He literally took an almost 600-page document and slimmed it down to about a 2-paragraph summary, pretty much saying, well, the president was exonerated of not doing any wrongdoing, when the report said more than likely the president was aware of the Russia meddling in the 2016 presidential election. He was more than aware. Even though it didn't say outright, it simply suggested Dorito was more than aware. Barr downplayed that. Barr also downplayed the simple fact of the matter of the case of Roger Stone. For all those that know right now, Roger Stone was caught lying to federal prosecutors and officers and was about to do 7 years in jail. Again, William Barr stepped in and sat there and was going to get the sentence almost reduced to the point to where even Dorito stepped in at the last minute and pardoned his best friend. Again, Barr still seems to step into things that are surrounded or connected to Trump in any way. And in this case, this third one was now the straw that broke the camel's back. Can an AG be impeached? Absolutely. In the same process, a president will be impeached. It would have to be brought up in the House. It would have to be unfortunately ratified by the Senate. And if all else is, and if the president does veto it, of course it goes back to the vote again, and they can actually overpower the veto by a second vote. It is possible for the AG to be removed in no sense different than the president. The problem is with that is just that now the Senate is still full of Republicans and Moscow Turtle Mitch is still at the head of it. They still can turn around and prevent that from happening. But it's not to sit there and say that putting it out on the docket does show some type of solidarity. But again, the entire administration is corrupt. If you really just look at the situation of it all, like Mr. Cook said at the beginning of my podcast, they're wannabe mobsters that are pretty much trying to be dictators. So moving right along, guys. Another thing, like I said, I don't mean to make this all about Dorito, but unfortunately, he has said a lot of dumb stuff recently. More so that he has decided that he is going to order federal agencies to stop racial sensitivity training. I wish I could make that up. He is sitting, I mean, we all know what racial sensitivity training is. For a lot of us, it is pretty much saying how to talk to black people. Excuse me. So, with that being said, he calls it as divisive anti-America propaganda. Are you freaking kidding me? If anything right now, sensitivity training is needed. Just from the fact of the matter is, when you look at the fact of the relations between African Americans and law enforcement, there is a certain group out there that could use some racial sensitivity training, and trust me, they do. Because many times as black people feel toward law enforcement, it can be used. But it is amazing to me that he calls it divisive anti-American propaganda. How? Because it's kind of funny if you're forcing a large amount of people, mainly white folks, who honestly did not have home training and don't actually see anybody else as their equal instead of them looking down on them as superior. Of course, they need sensitivity training because for some odd reason, some white people think that there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, calling it divisive anti-America propaganda sounds more like a white supremacist and not like a president. But we do have some other news going forward. Like I said, I do try to keep up with the police cases that are surrounding Ahmaud Arbery, that are surrounding Breonna Taylor, that are surrounding George Floyd, that are surrounding so many other cases. Like I said, we have a list of say their names, and we will not stop saying their names. But in this case, unfortunately, we have to add another name to that list of Daniel Prude. If you were watching my podcast last week, I did show the body cam footage of how Daniel Prude was treated because he was literally had a bag put over his head and was actually suffocated while the bag was over his head, which the cops claimed that he was spitting and things of that nature, that they decided to put a bag over his head. And unfortunately, he did die. And again, those 4 officers are now being charged. And like, I hate this. And it's like, you almost hear the same situation with almost every other person. You hear that same situation. You hear it with Ahmaud Arbery, that it's always, people would be rednecks decide to want to be cops. I mean, George Floyd, again, 4 cops, which again, I'll go into that story because I have some information on that too. 4 cops that took down that, decided to end a black man's life by putting a knee on his neck. And now you have in Rochester right now, 4 police officers who put a bag over a black man's head and decided to asphyxiate him, trying to arrest him. I have never understood for the life of me how officers always claim that the lives in danger when you always show up with at least 3 or 4 cops. You have mace, you have tasers, you have every non-lethal option available to you, and yet you still reach for the heat. It's time to admit sometimes the cops are just looking to kill black people and not actually bring them in. I think it's finally time to admit that. But anyway, moving right along, guys. Here's actually the mayor of Rochester saying forth that she has some news regarding the police chief and the command staff regarding the murder of Daniel Prude.
I am confirming that Chief Florent Singletary today announced his retirement along with Commando Morbido. I want to thank Chief Singletary and Commander Morbido for their service, and we appreciate them. I want to assure our Rochester community that the Rochester Police Department will continue to serve and protect our residents and our neighborhoods. Chief Singletary will remain in charge of the department through the end of the month, and I know that he and the officers will fulfill their duties. We have spoken about maintaining our restraint regarding the ongoing protests and ask all involved to remain peaceful. While the timing and tenor of these resignations is difficult, we have faced tough times before. I truly believe that we will get through this. I will be meeting with City Council to chart a path forward. I can assure this community that I am committed to instituting the reforms necessary in our police department. I know that there are many questions, but this just occurred, and honestly, I do not have the answers today. However, I will work diligently with my partners in government to provide those answers and share them with you in the coming days.
Well, it's a nice sign of leadership from the Rochester mayor. But let's actually go back along the timelines. Keep in mind, number one, the sudden retirements tells me that the police chief and the deputy chief and some of the command and some of the upper command of legislature up there, I should say, all of them all of a sudden retiring. That seems a little suspect. Even so, more so, like I said before, if these officers are definitely wrong, in which they are, I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. These officers were definitely wrong in how they decide to approach a man, and eventually wound in Mr. Prude's death. Do I think that these officers should be allowed to retire? No. I think that everybody, from the way these officers are to whoever command that they are under, honestly should all face some sort of punishment. I don't think that the police chief and the deputy chief and those of his command should be allowed to retire. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about the chiefs, and as far as the upper management of the police force. They're the ones that are being allowed to retire. As far as the 4 officers are concerned, the 4 officers have all been fired, but they're still but the state attorney is still looking into pending charges, and also possible hate crime. Keep in mind, I said possible hate crime. It is amazing to me that, of course, the Chiefs realized, and the Chiefs did almost, and it's kind of funny where they said, well, they announced it, and he said partly because he didn't want to anyway try to cover this up. Well, if he was being full of integrity and things of that nature, why did he not just go ahead and go through the process? Because again, this is the problem I have with law enforcement whenever law enforcement kills. Law enforcement actually has more protections against them, more protections for them than honestly anyone else. Keep in mind, officers don't get questioned after shootings. They usually have what they call a cooling off period, which means that internal affairs will not approach law enforcement officers until maybe hours, possibly even days after the shooting has occurred. I don't see anybody on the other end of that gave that same type of wonderful time to get your story straight. At the same time, police also can sit there and confer with others about their story before actually speaking to investigators. Yes, for a lot of people who don't know that, officers in officer shootings can talk to other officers on the scene and get their story straight before actually going to investigators and giving their side of the story. They also have something what's known as qualified immunity, which means that if officers are seen working in their capacity, no matter how heinous the crime or the act, they are cleared of it. So again, it is amazing to me how much law enforcement has working for them, to the point to where it's almost you can see why so many people are frustrated with not actually getting the justice that they deserve. And trust me, as long as these stories are going along, we are going to keep on covering them. Just the simple fact of the matter is just that these people, along with the entire list of other people, should also get justice for these. And these cops should be tried and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And if prison's on the table, then prison's on the table. So, with that also being said, guys, like I said before, I did talk about earlier about how Dorito wants to get rid of anti-sensitivity training, which is racial sensitivity training, especially law enforcement. And the reason why I say it's needed is because I want to avoid stories like this in the future.
Officers stop him. They say he matches a description of a suspect in a burglary, quote, a black man with a beard. And, well, then the man who had just gone for a jog, right, decides to start recording.
Hey, buddy. If you're not in any trouble or anything, there is a burglary that happened. You kind of fit the description. Let me just make sure that you're not in. Literally, they said white tank top, black shorts. And they said that you had a beard, all right?
Okay, moments later, you can see them handcuffing him.
For now, I'm going to detain you. Look, you're not under arrest. I'm detaining you right now because you fit the description, okay? Something happens to me. Nope, these are just black. Oh.
He's handcuffed for 14 minutes, and you see him now, Joseph Griffin, the man in that video. And look, Joseph, I really appreciate your taking the time. I mean, you go out for a jog. You know, I should note, it's 2 days after you just had a new baby. You're out for a jog. You're trying to get some exercise. They pull you aside. You're just right by your home. 14 minutes in handcuffs, 7 patrol cars. Your neighbors are all watching, which I know must have been awful and humiliating in so many ways. I mean, what was going through your head?
Well, it's just everything. I wasn't initially sure what was going on, so definitely confused. Also a little nervous and scared, honestly, very scary with everything going on in the news today.
Now, I want to play a little bit more of the video that showed what happened that you took. Here it is, Joseph.
Listen, bear with me, okay? Because you fit the description. I'm not saying you're guilty. I know. My sergeant's telling me to detain you. That's my sergeant.
I got you. I just had a daughter born 2 days ago, so I just have this on live.
It's live. Do you mind setting it down here?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I'll place it for you. Okay.
Right.
Just for now, I'm gonna detain you.
7 cop cars, though. Hey, everything going on is just a little bit scary.
Yep. This is it was a burglary. It's a burglary. It's serious. It's not a joke. Yep. We don't know that for sure, though. You know what I mean? See, that's what I'm trying to say. See it through us. See it through our eyes. We appreciate you being very cooperative. Other people would just.
I'm not trying to get shot over this.
You ain't gonna get.
So, I mean, look, it's just such a real interaction. Obviously, it didn't escalate. Officers didn't use force, but it was tense. And, you know, you're having to deal with the fact that because you're a black guy running down the street, they think that, you know, you're the suspect. I mean, how do you feel you were treated?
Honestly, overall, there were a few things I didn't agree with, but overall, I was okay with the situation. He did a few things, such as keeping the live recording for me. Actually had another officer hold the camera for me. So that made me feel a little bit more safe that my family and friends were watching. And I did understand the fact that they had to do their job, but nobody likes being put in cuffs.
No, I mean, the actual suspect, you know, that was described in the affidavit, white colored tank top, black baseball cap, dark colored shorts, and black flip flops. Now, you know, you fit some of that, but not a lot of that, right? You're out running, you have running shoes on, you don't have flip flops. You know, you're then questioning police in the video about this, right? And you went straight to the heart of the matter here about race. Here's that exchange.
So if I was white, I wouldn't have fit the description.
If the guy was white,
If it was a white guy,
tank top, black shorts, yes, you would. Same thing. It wouldn't have changed the story. Let's avoid that race car because it ain't here. I promise you that.
Did race play a role, do you think, Joseph?
It did, because the first part of the description is black male. So that's always going to be the first part of any description, what color you are. But no, I don't believe they just stopped me because I'm black. No, I did. There was a description. The scary thing is witness descriptions are just never 100% accurate. And to have your future and the life of that not accurate witness description is very scary.
Yeah, and you know, I want people to understand, you know, you're running in your own neighborhood. This is where you live. It's a predominantly white neighborhood. And this happens. I mean, you know, so you're cleared, obviously. The sheriff offers you a job and asks you to come in to train the officer. So tell me about that, how that happened.
Yes, Sheriff Chibwood reached out to me. He did extend the job opportunity to me. I told him I was happy with my management position in the ICU currently, but he did also offer me the chance to come actually talk with the sheriffs and help train as far as racial bias training, I believe. So it's a big opportunity that I think could help change the relationship between policing and the community,
Wow.
on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, and perhaps something good, you know, can come out of this. I really appreciate your taking the time and telling your story, Joseph, and congratulations on the baby.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, like I said before, a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, the officers didn't kill him, which I'm pretty sure there were some people who are going to sit there and say that. And I know a lot of people who are with law enforcement are going to sit there and say, well, that's the correct procedure. Here's the problem. Here's the problem that I have with this. Number one, if you do not understand how black people feel whenever law enforcement interacts with us, that we've always, I mean, it's the point of view, it's the perception. We are always seen as suspect. We're never seen as citizen, we're seen as suspect. We already think we're already thinking in the back of our minds we're already going to be guilty of something because an officer is messing with us or pulling us over or questioning us. We already feel that way. We already have that sense of dread. And anybody who says differently, you are very lucky. And I'll be honest with you, almost every black person I know has a horrible cop story. And if you don't have one, you are very lucky. And I do mean lucky. Does that not mean that you're not going to have a story of your own one day? I hope you don't. But at the same time, you are very lucky if you never ran into that. This man itself, keep in mind, I just talked about the fact that Dorito has just decided to ban anti-racial racial training, racial sensitivity training. And you have officers who literally took the description of a man who is a burglar and he sees a person jogging on the street and decides to detain him, to question him. Now, again, let's use a little common sense. If a person just robbed a house, supposedly, and you see a person just jogging out in the world, I'm just saying, is it you think you can let this one slide? It's like, the man's jogging. He's got nothing on him. What possibly could he break in with? I'm not saying he could. I'm not gonna say he could have used. The officer could have used some common sense here. I'm just saying that sometimes it is what it is as far as looking through the glass. Now, with also that being said, it's the way the officer. Now, I'll give the officer credit. I will give the officer credit. He did explain everything as he's doing it. The problem is this: that it should have just ended with the ID check. That's my argument. I've had it before. Trust me. With this, I've had. Oh man, I can't even tell you. Since I grew these out almost 4 years ago, I've had these locks for 4 years. Even though they need to be retwisted, I know. But I cannot tell you that me walking or driving, and sometimes I get stopped by a cop, and they'll sit there and say, and it's funny where they'll sit there and say, well, you just match the description. I always ask, what's the description? And they'll always sit there and say, well, black guy, big build, has locks, and was seen A, B, and C. I was like, officer, no offense, you're going to describe about 80% of all black people, and you're going to be, I'm sorry, you're going to be describing 80% of all black people in Nashville, because a lot of us have this. At the same time, it occurred in a city that I was nowhere near. But that officer at the time understood it. He didn't detain me. He asked for my ID. I provided it to him. And of course, he ran it, said, okay, he asked me, he's like, have you been in so-and-so today? I said, no, I've been in here. He goes, okay, that's all I needed. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt your time. Didn't mean to interrupt your day. Have a good one. That was probably the nicest interaction I ever had with law enforcement. In this man's case, it could have went the same way. And like I said before, I understand law enforcement people out there who watch this, and I thank you for watching. I understand that it is proper procedure that if a suspect has to be ID'd. You could ask them for the ID. Detaining is up to the officer. Every law enforcement person has told me that detainment is up to the officer at their discretion. If they believe you are a flight risk, then yes, they can detain you while they check your ID. But if the officer believes that you're not a flight risk, then he does not have to detain you. That's his discretion. Here's the thing that a lot of black people don't understand, especially the same with the black jogger. This young man who's now a father, again was wondering, well, why I'm just jogging? Why am I being detained? I mean, it's already bad enough that we get caught driving while black. Could you imagine jogging while black? Because apparently we're not safe anywhere. And again, these are the thoughts that go through our heads. And at the same time, the whole officers, even like one officer was explaining things and was trying to keep the situation cool. But it was tense. It was very tense. That situation was tense, and that officer didn't actually help when he's sitting there and saying, "Well, burglary is kind of burglary is a big deal, man. We got to, it's something they don't call it for nothing." At the same time, he goes, and the guy goes, well, if I was white, would I be given the same thing? And the officer's like, oh, we would still come after you. Really? The description says black man, white tank top, black shorts, and flip flops. If a white man was wearing all that, you still stop him? And of course, he go, yeah, no, you wouldn't. Because, again, I've seen this before, that they just happen to have this mentality of where, and of course, that was an optics piece. Keep in mind, that was an optics piece, because the officer realized he did not want to be the next officer out there to be associated with those that have killed black people or assaulted black people in any way. So trust me, that first officer, he kept on saying, well, it's my sergeant. My sergeant said I need to detain you. My sergeant said this. My sergeant said that. And again, it's the same rhetoric we hear from officers that detain black people. Like, for example, which I'll explain later a little bit in about the next few minutes, about the case surrounding George Floyd, in which the officers saying they were just following orders. So I'm not surprised at this point that when you sit there and you see a man who was simply jogging get detained for a crime that obviously he had nothing to deal with, then honestly, that's the entire reason why this sensitivity training is needed, because unless law enforcement officers get where we're coming from as black people, because I've said it before, the difference between law enforcement and black people is, at the end of the day, an officer can take off his uniform and be an ordinary person. We can't take off our skin. And when you go out there without a cop uniform, you're not seen as a cop, you're seen as a person. Black people are constantly reminded on a daily basis that we are black, even for negative and positive uppertones. You should know that by now. And even more so, the next story I shows pretty much explains the simple fact of the matter is that what we deal with as far as driving while black as well.
Video that shocked the nation. 32-year-old Philando Castillo killed by a police officer in 2016.
Sir, I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it then.
Don't pull it out.
Don't pull it out.
Fatally shot in a traffic stop that was a case of mistaken identity. The officer looking for robbery suspects. Castillo was not involved in any robbery and had a license to carry a weapon. While the Castillo case is an extreme example of what could happen during a police traffic stop, an ABC News investigation in partnership with our own stations showing in a number of major cities, black Americans are far more likely to be stopped than white Americans. In Minneapolis, 5 times more likely. In San Francisco and Chicago, 4 times more likely. 3 times more likely in Philadelphia and Los Angeles. But in some other cities, the rates are more equal. ABC News found that in Louisville and Houston, black Americans are as likely as white Americans to be stopped by police. But for many African Americans, traffic stops evoke intense feelings of fear.
Driving while black and dealing with law enforcement is one of the most serious and deadly encounters that could happen to a person of color these days.
Castillo had been stopped by police 52 times between 2002 and 2016, according to data compiled by the ACLU. 1 year, police pulled Castillo over 8 different times, most of the stops for minor traffic violations.
Does it offend you that he was pulled over that many times?
Yes, it does, because it definitely means he was profiled.
When it comes to profiling, many well-known and well-off black Americans say they are not exempt. NBA star Sterling Brown says officers in Milwaukee used excessive force during an incident in 2018.
Where's your driver's license? Back up. You don't see the issue here? Hold on. You don't see the issue here. You're not parked across 3 lanes. That's cool. That's cool. Good. Yeah, you get back in the car. Cool. 2390. Can I get another squad here? Back up.
Police approached Brown after seeing his car double parked in the handicapped parking space. Video shows officers asking Brown to take his hands out of his pockets, then tackling him to the ground and tasing him. Brown recently talked about the arrest with ESPN's Undefeated.
For some reason, they felt the need to, try to make an example out of me, which escalated to, me being tased and then me being booked for the night and going to the Milwaukee jail downtown.
8 officers involved in the incident were disciplined. Brown filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Milwaukee and several of the officers. He rejected a $400,000 settlement offer last fall, choosing to go instead to trial. He says what happened to him was not an isolated incident and prompted him to become an advocate for criminal justice reform.
It happens every day. I didn't, grow up, wanting to be a, quote unquote activist. But I mean, now that I'm, in this position, I'm not going to shy away from that role.
Like Brown, many black people say they fear they're already presumed guilty when stopped by police. Frank Baumgartner is a professor who studies policing and race. He says disparities like those revealed in our investigation highlight the mistrust between law enforcement and the communities they serve.
A number of African Americans have described to me what I coin being treated as suspects first and citizens second. Is that what you see playing out here?
You can be a suspect or you can be a citizen, but it's hard to feel fully your sense of citizenship when the police are treating you more as a suspect.
And if I take myself on mute, that actually works better. But what I was saying is just that he is correct. He is very correct. At the very end of that, we feel more like suspects. And I've said this before, and I know I said this a little bit earlier. We feel more like suspects when we get pulled over and we could be not guilty of anything. That's just the way we feel because of previous interactions and a history of black people in the police. And this is why sensitivity training is needed. Even though like I said before, the black jogger in the previous story, if you don't believe sensitivity training is needed, why in the world did the sheriff ask a complete stranger to come in and train his officers? Even more so, this is why I sit there and say about the whole defund the police, it's not about defunding the police. It's about holding them to a higher standard. It's about actually having them do sensitivity training. It's about having them learn de-escalation tactics. It's about having them recognize mental health instabilities. It's about having them find different ways, and actually do longer training than 6 months. Because a law enforcement officer, and I will not stop saying this, law enforcement officers training in the U.S. is 6 months when they graduate out of the academy. Hairstylists, barbers, plumbers, electricians, and everybody else goes to school longer than a law enforcement officer. That alone should tell you something. It's different in other countries, especially in the UK, where you had to be trained for 3 years. In Poland, you have to go through mental health evaluations and sensitivity training and different kind of checks on a mandatory basis. This is why I keep saying why law enforcement seems to work better in other countries than ours. Well, let's be honest, our law enforcement was based off groups of people that were hunting slaves. So we shouldn't be surprised that overseer eventually becomes officer. I mean, you've all heard that rap, haven't you? Overseer, officer. I think we've all heard that rap before. So again, this is the reason why I sit there and say, for a lot of people that won't understand, there is a big divide between the African American community and law enforcement. It's only because we have not only a dissatisfaction to them, but let's be honest, recent history has shown us that they have no problem pulling the heat out on us. And again, what could have been a simple situation could have been escalated. And again, I understand that a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, we've done this, done that. I said, please don't do that. Because I've heard well, maybe you should have complied. Maybe you should have listened. Maybe you should have done this, that, and the other. And we have seen situations time and time again where all of that is BS. Because a person still died, even though they did have those things that you said that, if we do those in front of cops. Which again, explains the fact of why racial sensitivity training is needed, because anybody who isn't black is not going to understand unless you've been treated like a black person, which very few who aren't black will understand us. Those who haven't will sit there and say, well, it has to be something you're doing. Again, the suspect mentality the suspect mentality that's being pushed upon us simply because we're black. But moving right along, guys, I did want to say if there was not another reason why you should not vote for Dorito, here it is. Because Dorito has decided that if he is reelected, that he will go forward with his next picks of Supreme Court judges. Because eventually we will need another Supreme Court judge, considering the fact that I'm almost certain Clarence Thomas is on his way out. I hope. But the scary part about this is Tom Cotton has sat there and said, well, let me get this right first. So Dorito has decided that he wants Tom Cotton as one of his picks for Supreme Court judges. And for all those that don't remember Tom Cotton, this pendejo decided that he wanted to say that the 1916 project, which was the actual project to actually teach what actually the true history of slavery to schools, he wanted to stop that. He also has sat there and said that he wants to overturn the Roe versus Wade decision, which protects abortion rights in America. For all those that don't know, Roe versus Wade is the reason why there is a choice for women to basically have abortions. Because I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Whatever a woman decides to do with her body is her choice and her choice alone, along with the decisions and consequences that follow. It is not above anybody else to be Captain Save-A-Ho to basically, I'm not gonna say an unborn child, to a fetus, to DNA is what it is. Because again, that's the whole point of Roe versus Wade. Because if a woman decides that she wants to do something with her body, she should be able to. It should not take a group of old white men to sit there and tell a woman what to do with her body. This is the reason why I will keep saying this. Because you will have those people, those for-life people who will come out of nowhere, who will sit there and say, well, what about the child? No one's speaking for the child. Okay, first and foremost, if you want the child that bad, you raise it. Oh, no, I just want it to live. Again, the hypocrisy of pro-life people. But moving right along, guys, on that note. But yes, he wants to overturn Roe versus Wade. If there was a reason why, how in the world, and you're wondering, yes, he's Republican. Yes, he got voted back in, surprisingly. But also, the simple thing about it is, he's not the only person on that list that we should be worried about. He also included Senator Ted Cruz, which, if you know who Ted Cruz is, that is a guy you definitely don't want as a Supreme Court justice, and including the most recent name, Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, who again, Daniel Cameron is now the Attorney General in Kentucky. The reason why that's important is because that is the person who is presiding over the case of Breonna Taylor. You know, the black woman that was killed in her sleep because a couple of cops decided to go ahead and break into the wrong house and killed this woman in her sleep. And now that very same AG person is now about to turn around. It's that same AG person who basically was actually at the Republican National Convention not too long ago, speaking about Dorito. And this is why a lot of people, mostly black people, are dismayed and disencouraged that Breonna Taylor may not get her justice because the AG had enough time to sit there and go to a quote-unquote Trump rally instead of prosecuting the officers who killed a black woman in her sleep by breaking into her house without due diligence. Again, we all should be very, very concerned. But hey, Alex, what'd you say? Alex, it's kind of funny that Republicans try to forget that 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices during the Roe versus Wade were appointed by Republicans. Yeah, you are exactly right. Yesterday was the second anniversary of Ted Cruz liking some, not so family safe content on his Twitter account. Yeah. Oh, I kind of wish I could have brought video of that. Unfortunately, there was no video of that because I would have loved to play it. But yes, we should be very concerned that Dorito has wanted to make sure that the Supreme Court justices lean more toward extreme conservatism than actually having a moderate split down the middle line of conservative and liberal judges. I personally would prefer progressive judges, but again, like I said, this is the reason why voting is definitely important. So if you have not registered to vote, please do so. And please do not let this be an election where you don't vote, because we have seen what happens when we don't vote. I did a podcast a few months ago where I showed that, a lot of African Americans did not vote. And if African Americans did vote, honestly, Dorito would have not won the states he would have won. That's just being honest. If a lot of, I said, I hate to say this, but we do have concessive voting power. And honestly, the data that showed from that last election is that a lot of us just didn't want to vote. And now, in this day and age, it is imperative that we vote. I don't care how you feel about Biden and Kamala Harris. I'll be honest with you, they're not my first choice. I wanted Bernie I wanted Bernie Sanders because I think that he had the most progressive view and actually had the right plan for America going forward. I would have took Elizabeth Warren because, again, she scares Wall Street. And I like that. I like the fact that she scares Wall Street and corporations, things of that nature. But you know what? We have Biden and we have Kamala Harris. Now, again, I'm gonna hope for the best, but honestly, we need the main thing is we can hold them accountable once we get them elected. We have to get Dorito out of the office. And keep in mind, Dorito needs the presidential seat more than he needs you. I'm gonna tell you, and again, because he is fighting a war on many fronts. Keep in mind, he's still being investigated for Russian interference. He's still being investigated for sexual assaults, more than one. He's still being investigated for not releasing his tax returns. He's still being investigated by the Manhattan DA and other district attorneys out there that are investigating his business holdings. He is still being investigated for his overseas interactions with the Saudi family and Dutch Bank and so many other areas, including China and North Korea. He needs the presidential seat to keep all those wolves at bay. Because let's also be honest, it would not be surprising if he loses the presidential seat, and if he does, the walls come tumbling down. But I also sit there and say this, folks, the Simpsons haven't been wrong yet. Just saying. But going right along, guys, I did want to talk about football. I know this is a news podcast. You know, we shouldn't talk about football. That's more towards your other podcasts. Yes, but I want to get away from the simple. But I did want to post a simple fact of the matter is that we might rejoice that football is back. But did we bring football back for this?
Director.
Thank you.
Yes, that was the Thursday. That was the first game in the NFL between the Houston Texans and Kansas City Chiefs, which they decided to have a moment of silence, for racial equality. A moment of silence. You heard booing, you heard cheering, let's go Chiefs! You heard all of that. And again, it amazes me so that we have a lot of fans out there who honestly could care less about racial equality. You've seen that happen already. It happened in the Thursday night game, and you heard booing for a moment of silence. Keep in mind, I didn't get the clip earlier when they did the national anthem. Oh, how quiet it was. How a lot of people stood up, even though you had a lot of people taking the knee, and you had a lot of people, doing the sign of Black Power and Black Unity. You had those individuals, and it was so quiet. But yet, moment of silence for racial equality. Woo! Just goes to show you, yeah, a lot of fans do not care because football's back and fuck racial equality. Interesting, isn't it? So again, I'm not surprised, but I did like the fact, man, that the Houston Texans did show team unity and did not come out during the national anthem, even though Jerry Jones has given his permission to his slaves, his football players, that yes, you can kneel during the anthem. Yes, because, Jerry Jones always feels like that plantation owner. You're going to do what I say, boy. You're going to play like a cowboy. I feel sorry for them Cowboys players. But going right along, guys, like I said, I was going to talk about the other shooting that happened. Again, this also was recently released about 4 police officers that were fired for a case that happened back in April regarding a fatal shooting. Check it out.
Calm down.
Down here.
Sit down, man. Just relax. Talk to us. Calm down.
Your shot is in danger.
Hey, someone tell them to shut off their siren.
Hands on, going hands on.
Calm down.
Yeah. Get back.
Get down. Get down. Just relax, bro. Just talk to us. Calm down. Calm down.
Cease fire! Cease fire!
The discharge of those 21 shots by those four members of the Houston Police Department are not objectively reasonable. I don't consider them objectively reasonable. The chain of command does not consider them objectively reasonable. And I believe that anyone that watches this tape, that sees this, would see that they had a lot of opportunities and a lot of other options readily available to them.
They did everything that everyone across this country is asking for law enforcement to do. They de-escalated and retreated for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. They used every non-lethal option available, multiple beanbag shotgun rounds until they ran out. They used multiple tasers, all while giving verbal commands to Mr. Chavez to give up peacefully that he did not adhere to.
And in this case, I have concluded that there was no imminent threat to any police officer, and they could have returned home to their families. No one should conclude that the dismissal of these officers is an indictment on HPD or the 5,300 police officers.
And yes, that was actually the case. That was, like I said, back in April regarding that shooting. And of course, 21 shots the end of it all. And then at the same time, the officers were now fired. Keep in mind, now fired in September. April and September, they debated that long on whether or not four officers did the right or wrong thing. And I'm sorry, 21 shots into one person by four different officers, to me, is not justified. I mean, here's the thing. I've noticed it for law enforcement. It's just that, number one, you guys do not have mental health awareness training unless you've been in the military. The military actually does have training for their MPs for de-escalation, for mental health awareness, and for all those things, just because of the soldiers that they actually police. So military police are going to have exactly more training than your average everyday law enforcement officer. That being said, there is no way to justify 21 shots into an individual, even more so to sit there and say, well, he's having mental health issues, and then your toxicology report shows that he had several drugs in the system. Again, it's four officers versus one man. You're going to sit there and tell me that, well, we beanbagged him. Why did you beanbag him? Well, we tased him. Why did you tase him? Of all things that I know that are effective, why don't you just mace the guy? I've been maced. Mace is effective. I don't care what drugs or stuff are you on. When you got mace in your eyes, you are down. I mean, I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how fast you are. When you get sprayed in the eyes with mace, brother, you are down. And even more so, mace is non-lethal. Again, no one chose to spray mace. The guy didn't have a gun in his hand. He didn't have a knife. He's simply walking. There's four of you. How in the world could four officers not figure out how to safely bring down a guy who was a danger to himself and to others? You're going to sit there and tell me that the only thing you had left, well, we beanbagged him, we tased him, now we just got to shoot him because he tried to pick up a taser? again, it's almost like the narrative was set for the officers to kill this man. Because you can literally see them saying, don't do it, don't reach for the taser. So no one's trying to kick the taser out, no one's trying to kick the taser away from him. Matter of fact, how did he get that close to the taser in the first place? I always thought that officers usually keep their weapons on him. How in the world was he able to get that position? To me, that just sounds like they're setting up a reason to kill this man. Or a reason to use lethal force. Because how else could you sit there and say 21 shots are justified? And again, why does it take almost 5+ months to finally do the right thing and get these officers fired? Although the right thing would also be charging these officers with manslaughter. But again, the district attorney is looking into that. Of course, the Houston police chief saying that the officer are appealing their firing. And the mayor of Houston is saying in no way is this a blight on our PD. Yes, it is. It's the fact that your PD did not see someone in duress and did not try to take them down safely. And I understand that safely doesn't mean that they're going to come away without a scratch. I mean that I'm talking about the simple fact of the matter is that everybody comes home. That's the big difference. And again, it amazes me, like I said, law enforcement just seems to have all of this protection when it comes to them. Correct me if I'm wrong. Law enforcement has more protection than the victims that they cause or the perpetrators that they go after. And I think there is something very wrong about that. Even more so, you'll see now about the 4 officers in the George Floyd case and how that's going down.
With protesters and heavy security outside the courthouse, the 4 fired Minneapolis police officers charged in connection with George Floyd's death appeared together in court for the first time.
We allege the actions of the defendants illegally and unjustifiably ended George Floyd's life.
The ex-officer's lawyers asking a judge for separate trials. In court filings this week, the attorney for Thomas Lane wrote there are very likely going to be antagonistic defenses presented at trial. It is plausible that all officers have a different version of what happened, and officers place blame on one another. Derek Chauvin, the officer who knelt on Floyd's neck, is charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. The others are charged with aiding and abetting, but all face up to 40 years in prison if convicted.
If you do the crime, you do the time. So why is it different for these guys? Because we will get justice for my brother.
Rookie officers Thomas Lane and Alexander King are arguing they were following the lead of Chauvin, a veteran officer. Chauvin and Tu Tao say they were simply assisting in an arrest that was in progress. Chauvin's attorney has also called his actions justifiable. In court filings, some of the officers' attorneys have highlighted Floyd's history of drug use as a factor in his death.
The only overdose that killed George Floyd was an overdose of excessive force and racism by the Minneapolis Police Department.
As the hearing ended, protesters mobbed former Officer Lane as he returned to his car. There will be no resolution for months. The ex-officers aren't set to go to trial until at least next March. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News.
And you know what? I've got to remember to unmute myself during this transition phase. This is getting terrible. So, again, this is the part where I sit there and say, again, this is not surprising. That even though in the murder of George Floyd, that it's almost as if when prosecuting officers, that again we're not going to see a trial on this till next year. And I've never understood why. Because again, they will never. If this was a suspect would never be given the same amount of time. Unless it's a high-profile case, they would not be given the same amount of time as a cop would when they're on the hook for killing an individual. And again, I'm not surprised now that all the 4 cops are going to be one tried separately, because 3 of them are going to turn on the one saying that, oh, we were just following orders. But again, the Derek Chauvin attorney is going to sit there and say, well, this person had a history of drug use. Really? So a history of drug use would also end to the man not being asphyxiated by a knee across the back of his neck. Yeah, let's see how that defense works. But again, but just like Breonna Taylor, just like Ahmaud Arbery, we're going to keep up with those stories just because you need to be informed, which is the whole point of this podcast. So, as we're getting down to our next to last couple of stories for our Feel Good News segment, for all those who are wondering if we're going to get back to normal in 2021, got some news for you. And Dr. Fauci, well, he doesn't seem very optimistic.
Infectious disease expert is tonight offering a sobering new pandemic timeline. An FDA-approved vaccine by the end of the year or early 2021, widespread vaccine distribution by mid-next year, and a return to normal sometime after that.
If you're talking about getting back to a degree of normality which resembles where we were prior to COVID, it's going to be well into 2021, maybe even towards the end of 2021.
Meanwhile, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx are trying to slow a new spread of COVID after the Labor Day weekend, especially among people who are asymptomatic.
If you've been on vacation, if you've gone to a hot spot, if you've gone to a party in the neighborhood, if you took your mask off and were not socially distant, you really need to get tested.
And test results are coming back much faster than the week to 10 days it took last month. The NIH reports 97% of results are now back within 3 days. In Scottsdale, Arizona, Common Spirit Health is now able to process 10,000 samples each day for hospitals in 21 states. Results within 36 hours.
We have so many asymptomatic people in the country. They don't know they have COVID. They don't know that they're potentially exposing many people to it.
Also tonight, a new CDC report suggests small children can transmit the virus. 12 children acquired COVID in child care centers, then spread it to parents and siblings. One parent had to be hospitalized. 2 of 3 asymptomatic children were spreading COVID.
We know from modeling studies that about 50% of the transmission occur from a person who's without symptoms to someone who's uninfected.
Those infected but asymptomatic continue to pose the biggest challenge. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
And for some back to matter, that again, I have been saying this. Not to say that we're going to be stuck indoors for next year. This is what happens when we don't follow the instructions. And this is what happens when people ask you to wear your mask and you want to scream, America. You want to say my rights are being violated and things of that nature. This is why we have to go to such extremes. And this is exactly why there needs to be better education out there, because most people understand how viruses work. That yes, kids are petri dishes. They can come up with new strains of influenza. That's why there's a flu shot every year for a new strain. Viruses, and just like us, can grow and adapt and become resilient to certain other cures and things of that nature. Hence the reason why we have different flu shots out there. Coronavirus is not different. It can evolve. That's the way viruses work. So, with that being said, of course, Anthony Fauci has sat there and said, like I said, it takes years. A vaccine to a virus is never done in the same year as the virus is reported. It takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years for a vaccine to be developed and be distributed, and then it takes years after that to see the effects of that vaccine. Again, COVID-19 is going to take a while for us to recover. It is not going to be done within this year. It may take after next year. But as I've been saying before, the way that we can make these numbers go down, again, wear a mask. Go out only if you need to. Don't go out to parties. Don't go down to Broadway on Nashville, Tennessee on a Saturday night with a street packed full of people just because you want to go enjoy some country music without a mask. Yes, I am being very specific, because that's usually what happens downtown every Saturday and Sunday night, where the crowds are packed to the gills and not one individual is wearing a mask. And yet they wonder why we still have COVID cases still coming in. This is the reason why I'm sitting there saying, guys, I am a big harper about this, because like I said, that COVID can attack children and it can attack elderly more quickly than it can your average 18 to 45-year-old adult. This is the reason why we have to be careful. This is the reason why we have to be aware, because COVID-19 is definitely real. So for anybody that, you can sit there and say, well, no, I didn't get sick, or I'm not going to wear a mask. Okay, cool. But COVID is much like systemic racism. You're not going to believe it until it happens to you. So, moving right along to our next to last story before we go ahead and yes, you're right, Derek. It does mitigate. I'm not saying. Let me also stress this before. Masks do mitigate the risk. They do reduce the risk. But at the same time, masks do work. I always heard them. Well, masks don't work because because if you get because the gas can if a gas can go through cloth, then why do we need this? I've heard that, and this is why I sit there and say education along with science is important. Masks do not prevent you from getting a mask will not prevent you from getting COVID-19. A mask will mitigate the risk of zero transmission, which means that if you're around somebody that has a mask, you have a mask, and they have COVID-19, your chances of getting COVID-19 from a person while both of you are masked are severely, severely lower. Much lower of you getting a much lower chance of you getting coronavirus if both of you are masked. If one person isn't masked or both people aren't masked, of course the chances of you catching the virus do go up. Simple science. What do you say, Alex? In my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if we're not back to pre-COVID-19 for about 3 years, but that's just my uneducated projection. You wouldn't be wrong. Again, when you look at downtown Nashville on a Saturday night, I'm just like, we will never get past this. We might be one of the very few states that will take forever to get past this, simply put, because folks don't follow directions. Simple as that. But let's go ahead and get to our last story before we get to our Feel Good News segment. And I think everybody's been watching so far because I know I did run a little bit long. I know I usually cap these off at an hour, but I just had a lot of stuff I just wanted to get to, and I was trying to get through as quickly as possible. So our last story before we do our Feel Good News segment, guys, and forgive me if I pronounce this college wrong. Dunesk University professor is basically put on leave, basically because he decided to have a very conversation about a certain word that he's giving his students to say. Check it out.
Okay. I'm giving you permission to use the word, okay? Because we're using the word in a pedagogical sense. What's the one word about race that we're not allowed to use? I'll give you a hint. It starts with N. It's even hard to say, okay? Because I'll tell you the word. And again, I'm not using it in any way other than to demonstrate a point. Fair enough? You there, Nick?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So in the clip, which there are longer clips, there is a longer clip on Twitter regarding that. Basically, the professor sat there and said about the N-word and told him that he gave his students permission to use the N-word. Okay, so let me stress this very clearly for anybody that's reading this podcast, for anybody that's watching this podcast. I was going to say reading. If you're listening to this podcast right now, I will say this as clearly as I can. If you are white, or you believe that you can say it because you're dating a black man, that you've had a black man's kids, or if you sit there and say, or if you just feel the need to say it because you believe you can, don't. It is never okay in any sense. It is never okay in any educational sense, any literal sense, in any situation that calls for it. Don't ever say it. Don't believe that you can say it. Don't feel like you can say it. It is not a trend. It is not cute. It is not you trying to fit in. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it will more than likely get your ass kicked. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again, there are certain words you simply just don't say. You don't say them because, again, violence is bound to ensue. So, the fact that this professor, a white man, felt like he could sit there and tell a student, it's okay, I give you permission to use the N-word, which I can understand why that student was like, oh, nope, I ain't saying it. You ain't getting my ass kicked. Even more so that he had put it on Twitter, and now that certain professor is on a leave of absence because he tried to sit there and say, well, I'm only using it in a pedagogical sense, which means he's only saying it for educational purposes or in an educational sense. Here's the thing. This is why, again, racial sensitivity training is needed. Because You wouldn't say other names about other races, but you feel the need to say the N-word. And the thing that kills me about that is the old excuse. And by old excuse, I mean, well, black people say it. Why can't we say it? And I've always said it best. I don't like the N-word. I don't call myself the N-word. I don't call my friends the N-word. It's just because it's a word to me. I've never understood this for the life of me. Whether different pronunciation, whether you say it with the ER or the GA, I don't say it. The reason why I don't say it is because it represents an age to where a lot of our ancestors heard that word and couldn't react. You heard that word but couldn't react. In this day and age, we hear that word, oh, we can react. We can. We are not, I mean, that's the thing about it. But you have to also understand, this comes from a period where, take the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, 60s, and even up till now, even in 2020, in certain areas, in certain backwoods, oh, they still call us that. Now, they may not be as brazen as they used to be. Keep in mind, they used to call us that name flat out, and nothing would happen to them. Now, a lot of them are like, okay, they're saying it, but they're saying it in secret Facebook groups. The thing about it is, we should educate about that word and its ugliness. That I'll be honest, to this day, I don't even understand why black people call themselves the N-word. I don't. I mean, we are Negus. We are the ancestors of black kings. I will always defend that. But we are definitely not. We're definitely not that. And, that's just my opinion about that. I mean, I know black people be out there and say, well, I only say that because it was a term of endearment. Well, then how do you feel about sagging? Because they try to use that very same argument there. But again, that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother day. Just know, don't say it. You can educate about the ugliness of that word and racial slavery and Jim Crow and how the roots of systemic racism led to where we are today. You can do that all you want to, but don't believe that you can just give permission to say a word simply put because you believe it doesn't have any meaning when it has all the meaning in the world. So, with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and move on to our feel-good news segments. Like I say, usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are sometimes doom and gloom and sometimes not so pleasant. I know this podcast was definitely a lot of unpleasant things, but it's the weekend. We're trying to get you off in a good mood, trying to get you right. Basically, just trying to have you enjoy life a little bit. Now, I always try to find feel-good news stories that just just give you hope. And right now, we need all the hope we can get. The first one is actually a historical lesson, and like I said, it's been a while since I've been to New York, but if I ever do go back to New York, I definitely want to try this place or go looking for this place just because of the historical finding behind it. And hopefully you guys will too. Check it out.
If you're going to come to New York, you can't leave without visiting the home of the Queen of Soul Food. You have to have fried chicken, waffles, ribs, collard greens. Some of the biggest celebrities that come to Sylvia's, it ranges from Whoopi Goldberg, Chris Rock, Beyonce, Liza Minnelli, and of course, the Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela. That was a highlight for my grandmother, hands down. Throughout the years, the restaurant has become sort of a campaign pit stop from President Barack Obama to Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders. We've had them all. Everyone comes to Sylvia's. Sylvia's is a hometown favorite because our dishes, they just all feel like warm hugs. My grandmother Sylvia was a people person. She would often say that I am Harlem. They just call me Sylvia.
I love people. I love to cook. I love to laugh. I love to talk. And I love to see people enjoy food.
In 1944, my grandparents moved to Harlem. She started working as a waitress at the famous Johnson's Luncheonette that was a couple of doors down from her home. She worked very hard to be Mr. Johnson's best waitress, and 16 years later, Mr. Johnson offered her the restaurant to purchase. On August 1st, 1962, based on a loan that her mom took out against the family farm, Sylvia's was born. The food that we serve at Sylvia's is authentic soul food, not to be confused with Southern comfort. This is soul.
I call it soul food because, like, I was born and raised on a farm in South Carolina, and that was what we call good soul. That's what I named the restaurant, Sylvia's Soul Food.
The restaurant was born in 1962 when soul was born. Everything was soul, soulful music, the art, and the vibrancy of Harlem. The history of it just goes hand in hand. It's the food that represents Black America. The recipes go back many, many generations, and the ingredients are the same ingredients that were brought over from the continent with the enslaved Africans to America. Our world famous talked about barbecue ribs. Then you have our down-home Southern fried chicken. No buttermilk here, it's just seasoned and massaged with a lot of love. Chicken and waffles, the barbecue chicken and rib combo, black-eyed peas, candied yams, string beans. That's what everyone loves. The restaurant has seen so many things in its 58 short years. In the 60s, after Martin Luther King was assassinated, the Harlem riots literally destroyed everything to the left and to the right of the restaurant, but the restaurant wasn't touched. My grandmother used that as an opportunity to just feed the community. We made it through 9/11. We fed everyone. A huge part of Sylvia's is the fact that we're family owned and operated. On any given day, you can find at least 2 generations of Sylvia's family here. We employ 117 people. They're our staff family. And hands down, the hardest thing that COVID did to us was it forced us to have to lay them off. We're only making about 20% of what we were bringing in. It's a hard time, but we're committed to seeing it through. People can help by definitely, if you're going to order local. Leave the big chains they'll be fine. But the smaller restaurants, your community restaurants need your help. What's going on? I ain't seen you in so long. The way my family takes the community into consideration, to be able to say not only am I 3rd generation Sylvia's, but I'm also a philanthropist. That's what makes me the most proud.
I thought that was pretty cool for a history lesson. Like I said, if I were in Harlem, New York, them ribs, man, I'm sorry, it's my cheat day. So I saw ribs and I saw fried chicken. I saw, I had my heart set on burgers and fries, but that might be me. I gotta find a place that does ribs. I gotta find oh, good Lord. I need to shut up. Anyway, the next story I have, like I said, I love the fact of seeing black entrepreneurs. I never can say that word. Black owners and black creationists, things of that nature. And I always love when they start, you inspire children. And when you inspire children, you find great things in that. And this kid's no exception.
2020 got off to a seriously slow start for Antonio Davis.
What summer started is when I started binge watching Grey's Anatomy.
Like all 16 seasons worth of Grey's Anatomy.
So I did not see him for several days because he was up all night. Antonio, what is going on? And then when he finally told me while I was watching TV, I was like, oh no, this is not okay.
Mom choosing to call in some backup.
I'm a sneakerhead. Antonio's a sneakerhead.
Miss Reese and Antonio had traveled to a sneaker convention together earlier in the year.
I already know what I need him to do, and I need him to get serious about his interests.
Miss Reese challenging Antonio to come up with a plan for a small business, and in less than a week, Kicks by Tone was born, a shoe restoration and cleaning business. In his neatly repurposed basement, Tonio is bringing new life to old souls.
Certain shoes on Jordans had a icy bottom, and once you wear them so much they turned yellow. So I re-iced them, and then deep clean was the top part of the shoe.
Once done, the shoes are shrink wrapped and tagged and ready for pickup. Mom Misha saying clients' cars have been lined up outside Tonio's house.
You're like waiting in line to park in your own driveway.
Yes, and one was a cute little girl, and I thought, what is she here for? Okay, shoes. Okay, great. Yeah, let's make it flip.
From binge watching to booming business.
Super proud. I'm super proud of him, and I know that, you know, it's just going to keep climbing up and up and up from here.
I would do anything and everything to take him further and further into this entrepreneur idea of his.
And if he can inspire other aspiring teen entrepreneurs like himself, well, that's an added bonus.
Anything's possible when you put your mind to it. Just pursue your dream.
Tonio's next dream, he's looking for investors or sneaker companies to help take his basement business to the next level. So Shark Tank Sharks, if you're watching.
I was literally about to say that. If he's on Shark Tank, somebody's going to jump on that. I love the fact the matter is, like I said before, I love the fact to see young black people actually are inspired, and instead of actually being shot down or being misdirected, you had groups out there that actually want to cultivate and say, okay, you want to do this? Come up with a business plan, or start actually with a business plan. And this young man did it. Now, I'm not sure where the correlation came between Grey's Anatomy and shoe restoration, but hey, I'm not going to knock it. Most people find their inspiration in the weirdest of places. So bravo to that young man. And like I said, if he's on Shark Tank, dude, he gonna clean up. But like I said, I love the fact of seeing more black entrepreneurship out there in the world, because that gives me hope for the next generation. And finally, the last story I got, guys, is about basically a principal which again, before I say this, educators have a special place in my heart. Teachers, especially great teachers, will always leave lasting impressions on students. And in my case, a lot of teachers and professors left their impression on me. And whenever it comes to seeing great educators, principals, things of that nature, it tugs at the heartstrings. I'm not gonna lie to you, because it reminds me of all the teachers that actually helped me and encouraged me, and without them, I wouldn't be who I am. So I love the fact that when I see teachers going beyond and actually imprinting positive things upon students. In this case, all this principal's doing is just giving a simple haircut.
My favorite part is just to communicating with my students. Just like to know what they're thinking, what they're reading, what they're learning today, and some of their goals. When I'm in a barbershop, I'm not Dr. Newton, their principal. I'm more of Dr. Newton, their barber, and I'm able to use this time as a mentoring time. Some students may express some of the issues that they're dealing with at home or in the community. And at this time, I'm able to listen and give them some feedback. I know when I was coming up as a kid, being in a barbershop and just to have barbershop conversations was always great. So that's what I kind of utilize with my kids here.
All right. And like I said, it's a very short story, but again, the fact that a principal is literally saying, hey, I'm trying to get that barbershop feeling. Now, I don't know about you. I know a lot of y'all, like for me, it's been a very long time since I've seen a barber. Because I used to get faded a lot. I used to get my hair cut a lot by barbers, and I used to remember those conversations. Barbers, especially with not only with the barber who's cutting your hair, but other people in the shop when it's all guys. And I don't know, like I said, for people who still get their haircuts and go to barber shops, the conversations can be all over the place, but a lot of them can be educational, a lot of them can be inspirational, and for really a lot of guys, it could be their peace. It could be their zen, their sanctuary, if you will. And like I said, I love the fact this principal is using that to basically connect more with his students and really just be a mentor, which is what is actually missing a lot. Which is actually just missing a lot these days with children as far as finding that mentor that just sometimes kid just wants to be able to talk to you. And like I said, I just love that it's still a village mentality out there regarding from that principal and everywhere else. But that is all that I got, guys. I do apologize because, like I said, usually my podcasts are capped off about an hour or so. I know we did run over a little bit long, so I apologize and thank everybody that was watching with me and or at least stuck their heads in and try to watch with me. I understand life is busy and we all have things we need to do, so I definitely don't knock that. But before I do get out of here, I do have to do some shameless plugging. For the simple fact of the matter, guys, is just that I also want to thank you. Like I said, it's kind of been a rough week as far as podcasting goes, which I do admit, which is still going to be a little bit of a rough week. So I do apologize for the gaps in my podcast. I do try to stay consistent. But like I said, life happens and we adjust. And of course, like I said, I still think everybody was still sending me emails and stuff to the Facebook page, like where's the other podcast? Where's my podcast? I didn't see you that podcast. Did something happen? Did something go wrong? Nothing's wrong. Just life. I thank everybody, but we'll be back on track eventually. So, with that being said, I do need to talk about my buddies who are probably either on here or somewhere about to be on here very soon. I'll talk about my buddy Vaughn, A Big BZA Dot. He has podcasts of his own. Hopefully, he will give me a graphic vid with himself and his shows on there because I always want to put a face with the shows that I'm talking about. But on Facebook and all social medias, it's A Big BZA Dot. He actually has a couple of shows. The first one is basically called the BSTs, his Intercast, in which is a news podcast, similar to mine, except it kind of goes along this other side of the entertainment side. That news can be music, video games, or trailers. I call him the king of weird trailers. And oh crap, I just remembered something about 9/11 that I was hoping to see on. And Vaughn, if you're watching this, I'm going to find that movie. I'm going to find that movie somehow. I'm going to find that movie and watch it because I just realized yesterday was the release date for it, and I'm going to go find that movie today, and we're going to watch it. He knows the movie I'm talking about because I've been excited ever since he showed the trailer. But anyway, he is the king of weird trailers, and I say weird trailers because he always finds the most interesting ones out there. But also to give you an opinion, he also wants to show what else is out there as well. His also shows interactive just like mine. He also has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, which is currently on hiatus for right now. But you can definitely go on his Facebook page and see previous episodes of Rhythmness in which you've seen him, myself, and others just review albums and go by a 4-tier rating system. And we do discuss it. And me and Vaughn, we do have our differences on the musical spectrum. But hey, differences in music have always led to great taste, and that's exactly what we try to do as far as having great conversations. He also has Random as Fuck, which is the pool of ratchetness. We sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. The videos are usually done to a theme. Some videos are funny, some videos are, wow, and some videos are just like, I can't believe they recorded that. But always funny and entertaining. And of course, he does have funking around, as I like to say, Vaughn is musically talented and gifted. And I always sat there and said, you need to show your process about how you make beats. And of course, that's where funking around is coming from. It's usually if you are a fan of the creative musical process of a genius, he won't say it, I will. You can definitely tune in to watch that. All the shows can be found on his Facebook page at ABigBZA Dot or on all social medias, ABigBZA Dot. But I recommend going to the Facebook page just because you'll be able to see when he's going live and when he'll be doing his shows. But speaking of hiatus, I will talk about my brother from the mother, Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher. Thomas Reed on Facebook, 2TBD on YouTube, who's currently on hiatus right now, but you can definitely go to his YouTube page or his Facebook and see previous episodes of To Be Determined, his fitness podcast, in which if you've seen Thomas Reed on Facebook, the man constantly works out. I would not be surprised if he's constantly working out right now. But he is a fitness nut. He loves talking about fitness, loves to help you if you're trying to get yourself back in shape, trying to get yourself back physically, mentally as well, because let's be honest, whatever the mind does, the body follows, and he is definitely a big proprietor of that. But right now it is on hiatus, but you can definitely go back and watch previous episodes of that either on his Facebook or his YouTube. Now, as for yours truly, I do have a few podcasts of my own. Every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. is the Burned Out Podcast, in which I basically tell stories as an IT person. Some of the stories can be funny, so if you find them funny, technically, you know it should be funny. If you're not laughing, then I'm probably talking about you, because I do tell stories from the IT side, customer-facing side of things, and Honestly, it's great for me, and honestly, it's better than therapy and less expensive. But hopefully, you find it funny every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. Of course, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon is the How the Frack We Got Here podcast that you're currently watching right now. Usually Saturday nights between 8 to 10 is the Off Limits podcast, in which the podcast that goes there. Programming change of note, there will not be one tonight, but we will come back with one. I'm trying to see if I can think about doing one during the week, just because next week might also be questionable because of some family things that are going on. So I might think about trying to do an off-limits podcast either Friday night or Thursday night. I have not decided. Just because next Saturday might also look like an iffy as well. So, but usually every Saturday, I know that's a lot. But usually every Saturday between 8 to 10 is the Off Limits podcast. And of course, on Sundays between 7 to 9 p.m. is my Get Bit podcast. It is my Blur podcast, which covers everything in the world of pop culture, sci-fi, video games, movies, television, Comic-Con, cosplay, stuff like that a nerd and a blurred could all enjoy. And of course, we do try to cover everything, especially if you have not seen Lovecraft Country. My God, I love that show. I even go so far as the what was the other show that was everybody was talking about? P-Valley. Yeah, P-Valley. Also another one. Also a great show if you haven't seen those as well. But we talk about all that on Get Bit. So all my shows can be found on my Facebook page, William Buchanan, or on their own Facebook or YouTube pages if you look them up, which you can look them up by their names. So either on Facebook or YouTube. If you definitely look up The Burned Out Podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, the Off Limits podcast, and Get Bit, that is GITBIT, you will be able to see every podcast that I've done thus far. Also, the thing about this, I would say, if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. We're only trying to make these shows better to where the platform can be, like in this case, family friendly and be able to enjoy it, because the whole point of How the Frack We Got Here is to inform you. We are not trying to change minds. We are not trying to persuade. We are not trying to lead you down a certain narrative or path. All we are simply doing here is presenting the information in front of you at full volume and allowing you to make up your own mind. Because that's how you truly get informed. Because informed means that you're not taking everything at face value. You are going in and finding out the information for yourself and coming back with sources to present to someone else in hopes that they'll do the same. Because an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. So I thank everybody for watching. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment as if it's here. I still want to know what you guys think about all the stories that we've done so far. And also, if there's stories that I've missed or stories that you would like to see covered or investigated, please let me know, and I'll do my best to accommodate that. Aside from that, guys, like I said, with COVID-19 out there, please be safe. Wear a mask. Do social distancing. Only go out if you need to. If you're sick, please stay at home. If you're really sick, that would be the time to go to the ER. And at the same time, like I said, it's just simple stuff that we can do. Please, like for example, please don't go down to downtown on a Saturday night, especially Nashville, Tennessee on Broadway, and increase the numbers. It just doesn't help. Just be safe and do everything of that. Aside from that, think an essential worker today if you can. Think a nurse, think a doctor, nurse's aide, doctor's aide, environmental people that work in the hospitals. Think truckers, think grocery store people, think gas station attendants. Think a person that works for the United States Postal Service. Think a person that works for UPS, FedEx, DHL, Amazon. Think those that actually don't have a choice, because let's be honest, that's a whole other argument that I want to go into right now during the end. But thank those that actually do come in and try to keep the lights on for us, for the rest of us to be able to still live our lives daily, because they deserve a lot more than that, but at least they can deserve us a thank you. So, aside from that, guys, please be safe, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you Sunday for Get Bit.